Welcome to this week's episode of Rookie Roulette. I'm your host, Tyler Metcalf. This week we have a really interesting one on one of the most impactful rookies this year, Pelican center from Baylor, Yves Missi. Missi ended up being the 21st pick to the New Orleans Pelicans. A bit of context and just kind of where he was at in terms of the no ceilings evals. On our final composite big board, Missi ended up at 31, which is looking to be way too low. Personally, he ended up at 26. And again, that's looking like it's too low as Missi is hitting the ground running and being way more impactful a lot quicker than I anticipated he would. I liked his kind of long term potential and what he could grow into, but I didn't think that he would be this impactful this quickly. And a lot of that is because they've just needed minutes from him. So he's kind of been thrown into the fire. Um, and it's kind of a sink or swim type of situation. And some of the numbers aren't super ideal, but the role he's being asked to play is really specific, about as simplified as they can make it for him. This Pelicans team is just kind of in a rough spot given their injuries and everything that's been going on with them this year. So I have a really, really good interview with No Ceilings family member, Jam Hines, and we're going to talk through Missi's kind of season so far, expectations for him going forward, and just with this Pelicans team, what they can do in the draft and what we can learn from Missi's season and evaluation process and apply it to the 2025 draft. So Jam is coming up in just a few minutes here, but I just wanted to run through some numbers with Missi so far this season. So when we look at the tape and the numbers, Missi has been exclusively a rim runner on offense. When we look at kind of the breakdown on synergy, 77.5% of his possessions are come as the roller on offensive rebounds and putbacks or on cuts. He's in the 97th percentile in terms of frequency as the roller and on offensive rebounds, and the 87th percentile in frequency on cuts. So in terms of offensive role, there's zero creation, there's zero shooting responsibilities. It's set screens, rim run, and kind of lurk in the dunker spot and just clean up. It's a pretty simple role, but it's an important one, and it's a great way, and it's something we see from uh, kind of rookie centers. It's a great way for them to kind of make an impact early on in their career as they kind of acclimate to the speed and physicality and complexity of NBA offenses. Additionally, 90.6% of his shots have been at the rim. That ranks in the 98th percentile in frequency. But unfortunately, even though all of his shots are basically coming at the rim, the efficiency and effectiveness at finishing hasn't quite been there. Per synergy, he's in the 43rd percentile in points per shot. And even when we look at his numbers on cleaning the glass, he's in just the 15th percentile among centers, shooting just 60% at the rim. So when he attacks the rim, he attacks it aggressively and just relentlessly. But the effectiveness, the finishing craft, the finishing touch isn't consistently there. What is there, though, is that he's drawing a foul a ton of the time. Uh, he's actually drawing a foul on 19.2% of his shots, which ranks in the 89th percentile. So even though he's not converting consistently enough at the rim, he's not shying away from contact. He's getting to the line a ton, and he's still making an impact and getting easy points at the line. Um, on the defensive side, his block rate of 2.7 ranks in the 79th percentile. His offensive rebounding rate of 12.5 ranks in the 86th percentile, but he's getting out leveraged and kind of moved around on the defensive boards far too much, where his defensive rebounding rate is just 16.7, which ranks in the 43rd percentile. So something he needs to get better at. Now, take these on-off numbers with a grain of salt because the Pelicans are a bad team right now, so no one really has good on-off differentiators. But I just kind of wanted to provide some context and what Pelicans fans can look for going forward with some sort of optimism. So when Missi's on the court, they have a defensive rating of 120.1, which ranks in the 11th percentile. Opponent's effective field goal rate is 57.2, which is in the 9th percentile. And opponent's offensive rebounding rate of 32.3 ranks in the 5th percentile. Not ideal. But of the Pelicans' 7 most used lineups, only one has a positive net rating of plus 13.7. And that lineup consists of DeJounte Murray, CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Zion, and Yves Missi. And if you're kind of looking forward, that's probably their starting 5 next year, kind of depending on Murray's injury, where they go in the draft. But overall, Missi's net rating is minus 10.7. Not ideal. When Zion is on the court with him, that jumps to just a minus 1.0. With Zion and no Brandon Ingram, it's plus 0.1. And with Zion, Trey Murphy, and DeJounte Murray with no Ingram, only 109 possessions, so not a massive sample size. That 4-man lineup of Missi, Zion, Murphy, Murray has a plus 12.5 net rating. So when we look forward to where the Pelicans are headed, this pairing of Missi and Zion seems to work. There are real signs that it's feasible going forward as they continue to develop. Then you add in the wing scoring of Trey Murphy, fits perfectly. Then you add in the competency of point guard play from a guy like DeJounte Murray or someone like Dylan Harper in the 2025 NBA draft, and things get really interesting. So some of the advanced numbers with Missi aren't ideal, but there are real signs for optimism with him going forward. But that's enough on Missi for now. Before we jump to my interview with Jam, let's pull up the wheel. We got to figure out who we're talking about next week. We're going to give it a spin here. We're going to get another guest. Don't worry. Oh boy, this guy's been on a heater. Rookie center for the Miami Heat. We'll be talking about him next week. But until then, let's jump over to my interview with Jam Hines. Thrilled to bring on No Ceilings family member, Jam Hines. Jam joined us this year, does awesome work for us. I think this is the first time that you and I have just one-on-one been on a pod and talked hoops together. So I was very excited when you agreed to come on and take time out of your day. Jam, how's it going?
Everything's going great. I'm happy to hop on here with you. Like you said, our first chance to really get a chance to talk one-on-one, and we got a great prospect to talk about, a great rookie to talk about, and a team that's kind of bottom of the barrel right now, but I think there's still some excitement with the team.
Yeah, so I kind of want to just start big picture with Missi, going back to him at Baylor, just kind of evaluation process. In the intro, I mentioned that on the final No Ceilings board of last year, he was 31. He was 26 on mine. Both those numbers are looking way too low. Just where were you at with Missi kind of as a prospect in general?
So I had BC in the top 20. For me, it was about a lot of what we're seeing with him right now. I'm seeing translate those rim running, play finishing, just making the most of his tools. I just remember and this was a big resume game. I'm sure you remember with him just against Duke and him just absolutely just swallowing. Right? Yes, just swallowing up Kyle Filipowski, who's having a really terrific rookie year as well, too. And at that point was getting lottery hype, justifiably so at the time. Very skilled 7-foot big who could take Missi inside and out, and he handled himself just superbly. And I think that just really helped him really launch from that point forward and as a prospect. But really, I was really excited to see him land with the Pelicans. It was a team that really needed what he could provide, and they needed what he could provide right away. We'll get more to what he's doing right now, but I've just been shocked to an extent to see considering how young he is, only been playing basketball 4 or 5 years, for him to give him what he's been giving them right now. I think it's been awesome.
Yeah, and you kind of mentioned it there, and I think that was one of the big hangups for me was just how raw I thought he still was, and I didn't expect him to be contributing this much this quickly. And it felt like throughout the entire process, whenever we were doing mock drafts and it would get to the Pelicans, it'd be like, all right, well, they don't have another center on the
Yeah,
roster. So Yves Missi is kind of the only one in this tier, in this range that makes sense because he kind of kept falling in that tier below, like Klingon and Sar and Edie, who
exactly.
pretty regularly were going lottery. And then there's a big drop off after Missy too. So it's like, okay, where do we go? And then, obviously Khalil Ware had his big rise too. So and for me, the biggest change throughout the season is, oh man, he's like a sponge with how quickly he's picking stuff up, how quickly he's developing. I thought he was going to need a little more time than he's gotten. But how is your kind of, or maybe it hasn't changed, but how is your kind of viewpoint or reaction to the pick and him as a prospect evolved throughout the season?
I think just like you've mentioned, and a lot of No Ceilings family, I feel like I ended up being too low on him.
Yeah.
Just thinking with the just raw, even with the tools, and then going to the Pelicans, it's just like a lot of times when you have a raw big with those tools, run and jump type of athlete, play finisher, you want to see them being paired with the point guard that's just going to feed them. And that just really wasn't the case set up to be with New Orleans. You hope it'll work with him working off of Zion and CJ being the veteran that he is and being able to set up off of his scoring gravity and everything like that. But there was no kind of this just pure facilitator that where he can just really eat off. But for him to do what he's doing right now when they really need him and to do it early, like he got his first, he was right in the rotation from day one. I know Daniel Tice was starting, and they had Jeremiah Robinson Earl early, and then he's starting by game 6 and there's been a lineup since then starting. And it's really making me consider how I evaluate guys like that. And I know don't want to get too much, straight away from Missi, but just guys who are in his position, those run and jump type of athletes who are a little bit raw, just how soon can they really contribute and what are those circumstances? And he's just walked into an incredible circumstances. And kind of the last thing here before I turn it back to you, we just mentioned how he's only been playing 4 or 5 years. That's what's really caught me the most by surprise. If he was someone playing basketball all his life, but he's still a little bit raw, but he's maybe one of those awkward, clunky kids, and he's growing into his body and those type of things. But he's a smooth soccer player, the footwork, all that is there, and it's just really been incredible to sponge, like you said. And I think that's been a huge reason why he's been able to adjust and use those tools on both ends of the court and have his impact.
So and you've kind of hinted at it, just the ability to make an impact this early. But just what has impressed you the most with Eves throughout this season, whether it's being able to contribute right away or some more technical things? Just what are you seeing from him that is making you really excited about his season so far, and then even going forward?
I think it's just his mentality. There's no back down from him on either end of the floor. I like to see the rim finishing kind of improving. I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
get to some of that, but just on offense, like he will look to dunk on you when he has that runway there. He wants to finish aggressively for the most part. Defensively, like he's not going to back down from any challenge. And the battle with him and Edie was a pretty fun as well. Him giving up that size to him having the big dunk over Edie, the fake handoff, and showing some of the ball skills into the dunk as well too. So I've just really been impressed with his overall aggressiveness, him not backing down, and some of the flashes that we've seen offensively with the footwork that he's showing in the post on certain catches, and he'll show you he can use the offhand. Is still working on it, of course, but those flashes, those have been very impressive as well.
Where are you at with just kind of like his offensive usage and role? Because I know obviously he's raw, these kind of springy run and jump centers, especially who are raw and young, uh,
Mhm.
they tend to just get thrown into, hey, just go rim run. Go. We're going to simplify your offensive role as much as humanly possible. And we're even seeing it with like Donovan Clingan in Portland,
Yeah.
where it's like, you're not going to be asked to do anything other than screen and clean up stuff around the rim. And like over 90% of Missy's shots are coming at the rim. Um, you mentioned the footwork. You mentioned the DHO stuff, and I think we saw some of that as the season went on at Baylor, where it's like
Mhm.
the DHO keeper started to pop up a little more and a little more. It's like, oh, this is fun. Like Missy's
Yes.
taking guys off the dribble, like he's showing a little ball skills. Now the effectiveness of it so far isn't there consistently this year, but we're starting to get sprinkles of it, or like some him stringing together multiple post moves, or like a little shot fake, pivot over the other shoulder. Just where you are with just his scoring game and his offensive usage right now.
I'm excited, but I think the Pelicans are approaching it the right way. It's like, all right, we're going to just smash pick and rolls with you, just hammer those with you. You're going to rim run. We want you on the glass, doing all those things that made him the exciting and enticing college prospect, and keeping things just so simplified for him. And I think that's incredibly important for bigs, especially him. The newness to the game, the rawness in his tools. Keep it simplified. Where do you go and excel? And I know Rucker talks about it all the time. Focus on what they can do. Like, what is the
Yep.
skill that's going to be the greatest impact? How does that fit into the framework? And how can the team get the best out of that and continue to extract that? You have that base foundation especially as a big man, the run and jump type of big. You do those big man things, and then we can expand your game. And I think that's what New Orleans is going to continue to do with them, and continue to get them more in those DHO keepers, show some of those ball skills. And I don't want to someone I liked a lot, and is Kai Jones.
Mm.
A lot of the same, more explosive athlete than I think than Missi, but a lot of the same criteria of the run and jump type of athletes. And he had the flashes of skill, ball skills, and those type of things. I think the fact that Missi's really buying into his role, and it is really focusing on things that he does great and is expanding those, and is the star in his role. I think this is so important for him and the Pelicans to be on that same page and align that way, as opposed to him already being like, all right, well, I know I can do this. I'm a rookie and what the case is, but I want to show that I can handle the ball a little bit more. I want to do this and that, and kind of go out of his role. And he hasn't done that at all, really, rarely, if ever. So I'm very excited about what he's shown right now, the approach and kind of the plan that they have. And honestly, he's not Embiid. He's, not Cat, former Minnesota Timberwolves great, Karl Anthony Towns. But, he's not going to get a lot of touches as far as being in the post and the mid post when you have Zion, you have CJ still there, and Trey Murphy as well, coming to his own, which has been incredible to see. So I really just love the approach they're taking with him offensively, and kind of spoon feeding him more and more while allowing him to shine in the best way possible for him and the team.
So feel free to, tell me I'm crazy here, but or maybe I'm just overthinking it. Do you have I feel like he's not quite as like springy as I remember or was expecting, where it's like on so many of these rolls, it's more of like he kind of floats out into like the short roll areas just to like widen that runway to the rim so he can really take off. Even when he's like lurking in the dunker spot, it's like a little more extended. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
a almost a deep mid-range, baseline jumper if he shot it. But again, it just gives him like that extra 2 steps or so to really take off. Am I overthinking that, or do you think how much of a hindrance is that? Because when we look at his, at rim finishing numbers, they're kind of bad for a center. He's like 14th percentile at like 60% at the rim. For
Mm-hmm.
centers, he's like 43rd percentile overall, I think, based on synergy. And is that having to have that extra 2 steps, is that just allowing defenders even more time to kind of recover and contest there? Or, and again, if I'm overthinking this, please tell me.
No, I'm so glad that you brought this up, because, honestly, when I was watching him and that translation, I was shocked by that as well. I was like, maybe that's just me. So I'm glad that you
Okay.
brought. I'm in complete agreement with you, and that's for some reason I was shocked at some of the rim numbers as well, because yes, aggressive for the most part, but it's not like so the game against Sacramento had a nice pick and roll. I think that was kind of, for me, emblematic of a lot of his rim finishing. Like, he missed a good amount at the rim. Offhand attempt that he missed went up kind of not as strong as he should. And then, like, in the fourth quarter, he has this monster dunk on the pick and roll, dunks over Levine, who kind of gives a little half jump and everything. And then it mentioned, the Edie dunk against on Edie against Memphis as well. Those are not as consistent as we would hope. He's very much of the run and jump athlete when he has that runway. And when he doesn't have that runway, he does get in trouble. Even when he does, if he doesn't get that full kind of 1-2, it's not as springy, as you said, and explosive as it looked on college. On the college tape, it's like, all right, so is that level of athlete, even guys who are not as athletic as him, for my opinion, like in that Sacramento game, I bring that because the most recent game, but more times than not, he was the most athletic big on the floor.
Yeah.
And it didn't really translate that way with his finishing, the way he played offensively. So that's something I certainly want to see more from him as well. And just figuring that out, especially from the dunker spot where he's lurking. I like that he's trying some push shots from there and some things, working on his touch. So it's good that he's exploring this type of versatility, rim finishing versatility, which is great with some finesse and some power. But really want to see that explosion and that above the rim finishing take off a little bit more. And I'm not sure if it's just more basketball time or kind of finding what the right angle is for him and just getting more comfortable. But that is certainly something to watch for him.
And I mean, it's, I harped on that the finishing numbers not being ideal, but he's also drawing like a shooting foul on like almost 20% of his shots. So, that kind of speaks to the mentality and physicality and the relentlessness of him attacking the rim. So, it's not all concern. There's a lot of positives there too. But then, I kind of think about, it's like, okay, if it, hope maybe it's just like fatigue at this point of the season, because this is the most basketball he's ever played consecutively at the highest level in the world. So understandable. But then, I kind of try and think like long term. It's like, all right, if they're going to have him really, like, if he bulks up, does that take away from it even more? But then if he doesn't, does it kind of continue to hinder some of the defensive rebounding numbers? And I just kind of get caught in the middle of like, what's the best thing to do here? But I kind of lean towards wanting him a little lighter, a little twitchier, and continuing to like settle into like those short roll areas and that extended, dunker spot area, because like you said, he's starting to experiment a little bit with the push shot. Even if he can just develop a 15-foot jumper that's somewhat reliable, I think that opens up, a little shot fake, and then he has the ball skills to drive past guys if they come out of their stance even a little bit. And then I think we're even starting to get some flashes of like passing stuff, like not a good passer by any means. The accuracy is all over the place, but I think some of his instincts and approach and desire to make that extra like kick out, I think, next year, year after, I think there's some like real fun kind of short roll stuff that they could experiment and explore with him.
No doubt. And like, even if the passes isn't always there, or if he isn't processing as quickly as you want, the fact that he is thinking about it and he's recognizing that it is there, that's just beautiful. Like you were saying, for him to be able to work in short roll in those type of situations, or if he's, do DHO keepers, if he draws, can drop it off and those type of things. So I just love the fact that he is thinking about those things. It's not like he's going to be a hub of the offense, so it's fine if he's not picking up right away.
Right.
But kind of tying it back to him still being new to the game. I know his brother played as well, but still him playing, and it's different once you are on the court and you are getting those experience and you kind of building up that database and learning how to process the game yourself. So I think all those are very, very encouraging. And I love that what we have seen from the college level, that he's bringing it to the NBA level and continue to build on that. And that's exactly what you want to see from prospects.
And this can be all of this could even be a one-word answer from you. I think he has like 3 jumpers on the year. Net was never really profiled as a stretch big by any means. Does it matter if he ever like actually shoots it?
No, that's just
Perfect.
all icing on the cake.
Yeah.
That's the gravy. It's fine.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's all about the athleticism, some interior ball skills, and improving that at rim finishing in terms of the offense. Um, the defensive side, where was kind of been your impression of him on that end of the floor?
Mixed bag, as expected, for a young big. He's shown the mobility in space, his ability to recover with that length and some of that quick twitch athleticism, shown some stuff in the drop as well. I think there's a lot of defensive versatility that is going to be available for them,
Yeah,
for him and then the Pelicans as well, especially if they're going to continue to keep Zion long term. I think it's going to be very interesting with him at the 4, Zion at the 4, and him at the 5 as well. But yeah, it's really been a mixed bag, but I'm not concerned about it. With me, I'm still in the same place with him as a prospect. I'm not sure if he's going to be like an elite type of rim protector or where he's going to kind of fall on that because of how raw he is and can be out of place and out of position on rotations and things of that nature too. All things that can be cleaned up, but to kind of be that elite shot blocker, those are kind of the nuances and the timing, those type of things. He does have really good timing. Those type of things are really important to becoming those type of elite shot blocker. Um, I'm curious to see if he's going to be an anchor type of big. We'll see. What are kind of your thoughts on him being an anchor big and just his defense in general?
it feels really hit or miss. Like where it's like when he's able to stay below the free throw line, I like it a lot. Especially like the help side shot blocking stuff. I think is like you mentioned, the timing on those is really good. When he comes over from the weak side, I think there's a lot of upside there. There's some flashes of him moving his feet in space, but he
Mhm.
generally looks kind of uncomfortable and a little slow with it. But what I kind of kept going back to was two things. First, he looks desperate not to switch anything in the pick and roll,
Yeah.
and he's playing like a really deep drop, and that kind of combined with he defends with his hands down a lot, which drives me insane. Um, but it just like those two things kind of end up getting him caught in like no man's land in the pick and roll
Mhm.
a bunch, and then if he's playing with like against a stretch big too, it's like, oh, this is gonna get carved to pieces real quick. And the Pelicans are so bad this year because of injuries and whatnot that it's like
Yeah.
I can't really go with like a whole lot of defensive metrics with him, just because like the on off stuff for everyone is bad. But then when
Yeah.
you just kind of watch the positioning and stuff, there's some really really good stuff, and then some really really bad stuff, which you know is to be expected with a guy that young and this new to basketball.
Yeah, it certainly is. And in these type of situations, when we're evaluating prospects, you brought it up early to start the show, and that's just kind of his MO being a sponge. You want
Yeah.
him to be able to pick up these type of things. Like you said, the hands are too low. Just work on those type of positioning with your hands and rotating early. For me, those type of things are fixable when you
Yes.
want to learn and you have good coaching.
Yeah,
Like those
like,
are
in
easy
an off
things.
season, like, he could come back next
Exactly.
October and hands high the entire time. He never puts
And
his
it's
hands
like
down, be like
exactly, and everyone is just like, "Oh, what hell's happened? He's made this big jump here," and it's just like I will much rather have to work with those type of things than
Yeah.
you being like 6'8", not a non-athlete, and we're just like, "Oh, what can we really do here?" But he's just like a ball of clay there with so much to really work with, and if he was this stubborn kid who's like, "Well, I've only been playing basketball for 4 or 5 years. I'm already this good. Look where I was drafted." Then you're in a tough situation, and I
Yeah.
don't think the situation that they're in, thankfully.
Yeah, and I hate I'm not trying to overblow the hand placement, but when you're that big and that long, it makes a difference, and then and he when he contests jumpers and stuff, he'll get his hands up, but it's all, like, reactionary, and I just like to see him
Yeah.
disrupt sight lines a little bit more. I think it'd add a couple deflections per game, all that good stuff. Um, but even though he kind of gets lost in no man's land or, mixes up his assignment or stuff, I love the work rate. I never feel like
Mhm.
he's like, even when he blows an assignment or something, he's always scrambling to recover or try and get a body on someone on the boards. That work rate and that desire to defend is almost always there. And that I think is one of the most encouraging aspects, especially with a rookie and especially with one on a team that's really struggling.
Yeah, and like that's what we always want to see for a prospect, like those type of intangible things, and will be good feedback behind the scenes that amplifies what we think we're saying and you kind of hear. So it's always good to have those type of things, and it allows him and prospects of his ilk to be able to really get that low hanging fruit, like you were saying, with fixing the hand placement and those type of things, where he can take an incredible leap in the offseason just by doing that type of studying. Nothing to do with his body, just that type of studying.
Defensively, do you think the kind of from court pairing of him and Zion long term is feasible?
That's a great question because I was much, much higher on as Zion as a defender coming
Yeah.
out. Like I just thought that he had the chance to be a really, really awesome defender. And I don't know if it's just me being stubborn or not, trying to hold on to that, or just like, all right, you show me flashes of it, of being a really good defender. I know you can do it. Show me again, and I want that consistency. But with that being said, and kind of the injury history with Zion, I do worry about what that pairing looks like. But with the Pelicans, they have the time to an extent to really to figure it out. Considering where they are in their stage of the rebuilding and development process of the team in general. But I am concerned about the floor there. I like the ceiling if it kind of gets there with that pairing, because what Zion can do as a switchable defender and two guys in the back end that can really be, at the very least, two formidable, impactful defensive playmakers on that back line. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping for. And them kind of figuring out maybe some of the positioning, kind of the technical team aspects are going to be a little bit rough, but the hope is to rely on their kind of athleticism and that defensive playmaking at the 4 or 5 spot.
Yeah, and I do think long term there's or short long term next couple
Yeah.
years there's some real
Yeah.
upside.
Yeah.
Like in terms of just like dominating the boards with those two guys,
Yes.
especially on the offensive end. Because I mean, Zion's just a monster on the offensive glass, as Missy has as well. I just think there's a lot of upside there. It's just what defensive, kind of like you said, what defensive version of Zion are we going to get? So
Mhm.
going back to Missy though, just kind of big picture, what if anything has kind of concerned you the most about his ceiling, his impact, his development, anything?
The Really the rim finishing, because it isn't great, and that's going to be his bread and butter.
Yeah.
I, like we mentioned, I love some of the experimentation and some of the offense stuff he's been able to show, some of the footwork around the rim. But ultimately, if you aren't going to be a high level finisher, and that's really what you do as a play finisher, and you haven't shown too much as a floor space or anything in the short roll with the jumper or anything like that, like it's really all eggs in the basket as you as a play finisher. And we really need for you to really figure that out to be more effective as just a consistent play finisher, whether it's through guys, around guys, and then once you're fouled, converting at the free throw line. But it really starts with me with that rim finishing.
And then going forward, both for just the rest of the season and then the next couple years, what are your expectations or hopes with Missy?
My hope is that he is the long-term answer at the 5 for the Pelicans. I think the Pelicans, I know the record isn't great right now, but I do believe they have a chance to get back in that play-in mix, to maybe actually legitimate playoff spot as early as next season, because the talent is there for them to do that. So I'm expecting for him to be a key piece for them on that end, on both ends of the court, of course, defensively, being able to be on that back end, coming somewhat of an anchor big, or at least a rim deterrent for them. And then also on the offensive end, continuing to grow as a play finisher, show a little bit more of the short roll stuff. And like you mentioned, I'm not worried about the jumper, just working on short roll and play finishing.
Just to wrap up, I want to talk some 2025 draft because the Pelicans are in the running for a hell of a pick. They're currently slotted at the second pick, which
Yeah.
would probably take Cooper Flag out of the running for them. But let's be optimistic. Let's say the lottery odds go in their favor and they do jump to that number one pick. If you're them, are you hesitating at all about going Cooper Flag or Dylan Harper? Or are you just Cooper, we're good and we'll figure it out?
Oh, without a doubt, Cooper, we're good.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
is the
Okay.
tier
Just
one
making sure.
prospect for me. Yeah, yeah. And they should not overthink that. I think if they are in the second spot, that's what gets a little bit tricky for them and
Oh,
kind of
okay.
figuring it out. But I think you would rather be, just for me, like, I don't want to get into too much of this as an Ace Bailey type of show right now, but I do have Dylan at the number two spot. I think it'd be a great fit for them as well. I just am still very, very intrigued about what Ace Bailey can do offensively and potentially defensively there, just the upside there. And it's like, how many times they're really going to be swinging at the top of the draft if things goes well for them. So it'll be very, very interesting what they get to. At one, it should be a no-brainer. And like this Cooper and Zion together and Missi, what that front court with Trey Murphy, who can play some of the two for you as well. Just the size and the length and athleticism, that's incredibly, incredibly exciting.
Yeah, I know a defensive wing trio of Trey, Herb, and Cooper
Oh my
sounds like an
god, how did I
absolute
forget about Herb? Oh my god.
sounds like an
Yikes.
absolute nightmare. And then let's say they go at the two pick and they go with Ace Bailey. It's a lot of fun too. I'm not loving the lack of initiation and point guard play,
Yeah, yeah,
depending on when DeJounte Murray eventually comes back. Uh, but I've kind of been in the boat of like 2 and 3 are real interchangeable on my board, and it's just
mhm,
Dylan or Ace, and they're in the same tier for me. I have Ace at 2, but it's really fit dependent. If I'm New Orleans, I'm like,
exactly.
I'm gonna go with the bully ball 6'6" point guard who does a bit of everything, and I just love the fit of Dylan Harper with that team. Now, if they drop to 3 and Ace is there, I'm not upset about that either.
Mhm,
I think the fit is a little clunkier, but again, the
yeah.
defensive upside, the shot, the off ball scoring with him, pairing with Trey and Herb and Zion, I think that's a lot of fun still. But let's unfortunately, lottery odds go how they will. Uh let's say the Pelicans drop a couple spots in there in like that 5, 6, 7 range. Who would you be kind of looking at or really excited about in that range for them?
Oh, Casper's for sure. Like if you miss out on Dylan and you're looking
Yeah.
for another initiator, can space the floor for you as well and do that from day one and kind of use some of his size as well too. And yeah, I think that is would be a perfect fit for him as well. We'll see what happens with VJ, who was in that top three entering, but I think he's another great fit for them as well too. Doesn't quite fit that initiating type of a role, maybe that's something we'll let them kind of like let them rock out with. You have the ball in your hand, and we'll kind of figure it out. Because we do have Murray there as well, and then McCollum's still there too, and let them kind of figure it out and work with them too. And then the defensive aspect too, like that's a very very scary addition to what they can do defensively. So I'm looking forward to what the possibilities could be for them there as well. But those would be kind of the two I would be focusing on if they kind of go into that 4 or 5 spot.
And then let's just go full bizarro world, where basically all the perimeter players, guards, wings, the top tier guys are off the board, and the bigs were totally ignored. It's just Derek Queen, Malwatch, Sorber on the board.
Ooh,
Would you be tempted?
ooh,
Would you be tempted at all
ooh.
to go with another big there to kind of just add more center depth and size and physicality to pair with Missy and have a, a center tandem that you can play with going into the future, or do you think that that's just a little too much of the same thing?
No, that's very intriguing. I didn't really give that too much thought, but really considering only because with Missi there at the 5 and Zion probably getting some looks at the 5 too, but they still need that size there long term. Malawak, I think maybe you and I are kind of on the same page. I know others in the Ceiling family. I just don't have them quite that high. I know I will need to raise them, and I should, but just for him, if he's like in that top 5, top 10 range, I'm not quite there. And I think it's really you're really duplicating between him
Yeah.
and Missi as well too, unless unless you really believe in a shot for one of them that could be very enticing. But I would like kind of Asa as well in that mix as well too. But Derek Queen, I'm a huge fan, to kind of give them a different look at the 5 spot too. I think that would be a lot of fun.
All right, and then just kind of last thing, on theme with Maxwell's piece that went up at NoCeilingsNBA.com about learning from past evaluations. You kind of mentioned it
Check that
earlier
out.
about how you kind of mentioned it earlier about how you're taking some of what you learned from the eval process with Missy and applying it to future guys. So what what are those kind of aspects that you learned from either what you hit on or missed on, or just kind of how Missy's rookie year has gone, and how are you applying that to guys going forward?
Well, really, for guys like me, see the run and jump athletes, the play finishers, for me, those guys are really fit dependent. And I still hold to that belief, but I'm backing off that just slightly that maybe not all of those guys are fit dependent. When I really talk about that, it's more so like I mentioned with Misi having guys who is going to feed him. You have that point guard. I know in the previous no ceilings mock draft, check that out too. We had that out. We had talked about guys like Malawak, if he's a fit with the Hawks, because you have someone like Trey, and then with the Pistons as well. You have someone like Cunningham who can feed you. Those are great fits for him. But there was no fit like that for Misi for him to be walked into a situation where he's spoon fed, but he's found a way to contribute with his motor, with his energy. So I think I'm really looking more for guys like who are in that run and jump athlete, what that motor is too. How can you really be a shot creator for yourself in a sense with your motor by what you're doing, and not necessarily have to rely upon those spoon fed finishes. So that's kind of what I'm trying to learn from this, and I'm really excited to see what his development continues to look like. So I think a lot can be learned from him because of the ball skill flashes. He's not, and the field flashes. It's just not this just pure athletic marvel who does not know what he's doing on the court.
Makes a lot of sense. Jam, this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Please tell everyone where they can follow you, find your stuff, plug away.
Of course, man, this was incredible. I'm excited to do this. Looking forward to doing it again sometime soon. You can find all my stuff at NoCeilingsNBA.com. It's maybe the first time I've actually got that right from Odin. I'm learning here.
Yeah, sounds
Find
good.
my work, yeah, find my work there, and just the fantastic work of all the team there, and also on X at Jam on the boards. Recently wrote about Toby Lawal from Virginia Tech. We talked about play finishers here, explosive play finishers. He's in that mold as well in his evolving game. Someone who I'm very excited for as well too. So those are main things that I have, and just check out everybody's work. I'm excited to be a part of the team, the family this year. It's just an incredible group, motivated, always learning from you and the rest of the team. So I'm incredibly excited about what we have brewing.
Well, I know I speak for the rest of the team, but we're the lucky ones to have you. Everyone, go follow Jam. He does incredible work and is just one of the best people in the space. Jam, thanks.
Thank you.